had throughout my life. And my purpose in doing this is twofold, really. One is to record them for myself. I was going to write my memoirs, but I can see it is so difficult for me to write and not go into reams of material that are probably not necessary. And I am a natural storyteller, so this makes it much easier, and I hope to have a sense of your presence with me as I do this. Thank you very much. And first of all, I will say or describe myself as a mystic. And many of you may not have any clue what that means. I would back up a ways into our culture and time and say most of you know the word psychic, okay? And that deals with the paranormal experiences. Okay, I can hang on to that, but my experience has gone far beyond that at this point and early in my life, to really include many things that are more spiritual in nature. And besides, psychic has become a trite and, at this point, rather a meaningless word in our culture. And it evokes all sorts of negative responses like fear, distrust, falsehoods, deceit. Anyway, mystic is inclusive of every experience involving what my friend and mentor David Zarza describes as seventh sense gifts or abilities. Now, he says seventh sense, and the reason for that is that we all experience sixth sense. Okay, that's intuition, but that is not to be confused with paranormal experiences of the seventh sense gifts or dimension. Anyway, so as David describes it, the sixth sense is centered in our brain. I would guess personally it's probably in the fight or flight area of the brain, the medulla, and is part of our body. And part of it, responses are inherited. There are responses which were developed in ancient times for protection, for survival. But the paranormal is way beyond that. The seventh sense gifts are gifts of the spirit. And when I say the spirit, I'm talking about the universe, what many of us think of as God, or the Holy Spirit, or the risen Christ, or there are many others. But we do have that within us because we are spiritual beings. That is our identity, which is somewhat masked from us when we come into this world. We're given amnesia, probably fully around age 5 or 6, to not remember any of the spiritual things. And that is because we need to find out who we really are and grow without the crutches, if you want to think of it that way. At any rate, back to the paranormal. There are many of the seventh sense gifts, and all of these, or many of them, mirror our normal senses. There is the seventh sense gift of touch, hearing, seeing, which usually is related to what we think of as the third eye, or the pineal gland up here. There is seventh sense knowing, and that is knowledge or information that comes directly to us. And that can include a spirit, for instance, or a guide or an angel speaking to us. And that may come audibly in language, or it may come directly as thought or pre-verbal information. And I've perceived both and quite comfortable with either. I usually don't pay much attention to the difference. And so it's if it's pre-verbal, you don't have to worry about any language barriers because it's before language, prior to language. So in some sense, in that, it is linked to spirit. And when I refer to spirit with a capital S, as Carl Jung referred to it, that lives within us. We are, and we live within it. In that sense, we live within one another. We are part of one another. We are part of creation. It lives very much within each one of us. And if you want to think of it as universe or the Father, also living within us, and we live within them or it or he. Pronouns are really useless at this point when you're talking about something so great. And I have had to revise my sense of theology over the years because so many of my experiences stretched me beyond what I had been taught. And yet I've learned to understand and accept the information that comes because it's valid. It has validated itself for me. So, welcome. I'll give you a brief rundown of my education. I have a master's in psychology, and that includes hypnotherapy, psychotherapy. I've had my own psychotherapy practice, and I have done a lot of dream work, basically with Jungian focus on that, looking at living metaphors, and archetypes, which are energetic focuses of specific things. For instance, the old man or the old woman or the gardener or doctor, or they're universal. All humanity carries those within our, what Jung called the collective unconscious. So those are in our dreams. Those are the characters in our dreams. And they are also large figures of energy that direct and guide our behavior in ways that we usually don't know. I won't go into that, but I have a background in geology, some paleontology. I have a consuming interest in collecting shells, seashells, primarily saltwater seashells. I just don't have room for everything. I used to have a phenomenal fossil collection that's still an interest. For many years I was a jeweler, so I'm very interested in gems, and I will go into some detail as to why when I go back in my own life. But for now, that tells you some about my background. Also, I've been in retailing for about 19 years with my own store, part of that time, 10 years, and that was with my partner who became my husband. And I will say now, and I hope this does not put any of you off, but he was an Episcopal priest. And in our parish, I was his spouse. It was very accepted. There was no problems with in the Episcopal Church. I'm not selling a church, by the way, or any particular faith, because I think spirituality is so far greater and beyond any particular faith. I can define what faith probably is at some point, but this is not the time. I'm not interested in turning anyone off. I'm interested in teaching and sharing, because there is so much to share with you. My experiences are pretty unusual, but that doesn't mean they're inaccessible for any one of you. Any of you could experience these. And I want you to know that you all have the seventh sense gifts. It's a part of you because you are a spiritual being, and those are the senses of your spirit. What's important for you to know is that when your body dies, those senses remain as a part of your spirit. They don't go away. Your sixth sense certainly will, but you won't need it there. So in many ways, your seventh sense gifts link us to the spiritual directly and to the unseen, what ordinarily is the unseen world for most of us, which is the greater world or universe, which is hidden from us here, or masked from us. And I think it's part of our task to learn how to open the veil, open the blinds, the shutters, and see through and understand what reality really is and where we fit in with that reality. And be able to explore what part we are of it and what we may bring to that. My gift that I bring to this reality in my life now is the gift of being the mystic, exercising the seventh sense gifts, which I consider gifts from the Spirit or God, because I've had a couple of miracles which very clearly let me know where they came from. And so I do prayer and meditation, and when I pray, I ask frequently to be an instrument of the Creator or the Spirit, to be able to use those gifts to help us, humanity, in one way or another. It doesn't matter to me how. That's not up to me. I try to be open to the call, and it is different from maybe day to day or week to week. And it's always kind of a surprise. I never know what waits for me. And that's one of the joys of my life now. And it's a fulfilling life. And I wish for you, all of you, to experience some of that in your lives at some point, because it's a part of you already. Some of you may have had experiences you might call psychic, maybe just one type or another, and maybe have put them away because you're afraid of what people might think. So you wall them off, push them into the back of your memory, but they will come back at certain times in your life, and you'll wonder what I was supposed to do with that, or was I supposed to do something with it, or why did I get that? What was its purpose? And I will tell you that each one has a purpose. And I'll go into that more. Our culture has taught us, and it's right out of the Middle Ages and before, that this whole idea is connecting with evil. That belongs to Middle Age, primarily Christianity, and there were other religions too that taught that speaking with spirits was evil, or having them speak to you was evil, and that primarily came from the churches during the Middle Ages because they wanted to control everyone. And part of it was trying to maintain order out of chaos in those days, which I do understand. But they've continued to try to keep us held like that, denying us our spirituality, and I mean that. And any opening to that they see as a threat. That is beginning to change. Some are beginning to grow and expand. But I think it's just important to let you know that these gifts come only from one place. I can tell you that the devil is not interested in healing people. I've been told that so many times by even relatives. One of the things I do is healing. I'm a Reiki master. I do therapeutic touch, therapeutic healing touch, and Hopi mind clearing. That was my primary focus when I started working with the gifts. Those were kind of the first ones I was aware of, other than sixth sense intuition, but it began to go further than that. But the healing has been primary for me for a long time, and it's still there. It doesn't go away. Sometimes people fear losing these gifts if they haven't felt them or experienced them in a while. I had demonstrated to me by an ex-nun who was thrown out of her convent because she prayed to the spirits, but they also spoke to her, and that was a no-no. So I will just leave it at that. She asked me to see for her. That's clairvoyance. Or to look into her past, which I did. I had not experienced doing that for someone else before, but when she asked, it was right there. And I was stunned. I saw landscape in full color, 3 dimensions, and I was physically there. And that was a previous life of hers. So she assured me I hadn't lost anything. I just hadn't used it in a while or been too busy with my work, my retail days, to take time and give energy to open to doing meditation or prayer, much prayer anyway. So that's another piece of me. So I will leave it at that and give you a little rest, and I will check back in. And the next episode, well, I'll renumber them all at some point. And the next one I'll record, which will be let's see, this is number 1, I'll renumber them. But number 5 will be my experience of my first, I shouldn't say the first miracle I experienced. And it's a real head scratcher. It opened me to experience and believe in something I thought was impossible. I didn't think a human brain could wrap itself around this. And I'll talk more about that. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, morning, or evening ahead of you. Take care. Hello again.